Hey guys, and welcome back to Hardware Unboxed. So crowd-funded tech products have a long history of being complete garbage, usually shipping years after their original launch dates with missing features, broken functionality, and no further support. So when I heard that I could review the crowdfunded EV, which is a lower cost, better featured competitor to the Microsoft Surface Pro, I was expecting to find yet another piece of junk that failed to live up to the hype, but I was completely and utterly wrong. From my experience with the EV over the past few weeks, it's not just a great competitor to the Surface Pro, it's a better option in several ways. But before I get into the nitty-gritty, let's talk basics. You'll see the Surface Pro referenced a lot in this review, and that's for a key reason. The EV is very similar from a hardware and design perspective. It's a 12.3-inch Windows 10 tablet with a magnetic, detachable keyboard cover and a kickstand. It's designed for people that want to work on the go and want to combine the flexibility of a tablet form factor, with the convenience of typing on a physical keyboard. The main selling point here is that if you were thinking of getting a Surface Pro, you might want to consider the EV instead. Similar form factor, similar hardware, but at a lower price and with more features. As I'm sure you can appreciate, that's an enticing proposition for those interested in the Surface Pro. Like with the Surface Pro, there are a range of hardware configurations. They come with different processors, memory, and storage capacity. The base model, which retails for $800 US, packs an Intel Core i3 7Y30, 8GB of RAM, and 128GB of SSD space. But you can configure the EV up to a Core i7 7Y75, 16GB of RAM, and a 1TB SSD for $2,000 US. Now my review model was one step down from the top with a 512GB SSD instead of that 1TB one, and it comes with a retail price of $1,600 US. The EV is cheaper across the board for a comparable hardware configuration relative to the Surface Pro. This is partly due to one simple factor. Every EV comes with a detachable keyboard and active stylus included in the box, while with the Surface Pro, these essential accessories are expensive extras. If you need a quick comparison, the EV with the Core i5 CPU, 8GB of RAM, and 256GB SSD costs $1,200 with the keyboard and stylus included. And if you're after a comparable 2017 Surface Pro, you're looking at $1,300 plus $130 for the type cover and $100 for the pen. So the EV, it's $330 cheaper, and the difference only gets larger at higher end configurations. Enough talk about pricing, let's discuss the actual design of this tablet. One of the Surface Pro's best features is its beautiful magnesium body. The EV gets a lot of things right with its own version, a solid, well-built metal unibody, to the point where most of the complaints are nitpicks rather than deal-breaking flaws. The chassis looks great, it's extremely solid with no obvious seams or manufacturing defects, and it feels wonderful to hold thanks to the matte metal finish. Best of all, the design doesn't feel like a janky, crowd-funded piece of garbage. Had a major player like Dell or Lenovo release this exact same design, it too would receive praise for its premium construction and would fit in well with their top-tier products. The EV wouldn't be a Surface Pro competitor without a kickstand, so it's no surprise to see a near identical kickstand implemented here. The EV's kickstand doesn't have the same range of motion as the Surface Pro, 135 versus 165 degrees, but it comes close. It has a smooth hinge allowing any angle to be set, yet the hinge is strong enough to maintain this angle without accidentally sliding to a different angle. It's a great kickstand. It feels tough enough to resist a beating over the lifetime of the tablet. As for features, the EV raises the bar significantly compared to the limited in comparison Surface Pro. Every aspect of the Surface Pro is included. There's a full-size USB 3.0 port, micro SD card slot, headphone jack, keyboard connector, and cameras on both sides. There's also top-firing speakers, which are terrible, but they're there. On top of this though, the EV has everything you wanted the Surface Pro to include but didn't come with. There's an additional USB 3.0 Type A port for 2 in total, which is extremely handy for attaching multiple accessories, but it gets better because the EV has both a USB 3.1 Type C port and a Thunderbolt 3 port. Microsoft has resisted adding Thunderbolt to the Surface Pro for some reason, but you get it here with full compatibility for DisplayPort and external GPUs. Consequently, there's no mini DisplayPort, but Thunderbolt 3 is a far more useful and allows similar display out connectivity through dongles anyway. So the EV includes double the USB-A ports, adds 2 other USB-C ports, and the widely requested Thunderbolt. It basically has the I/O of a modern laptop, but in a tablet form factor. For charging, there's no magnetic wall charger. Instead, the EV uses the universal standard USB-C charging through either of the ports. I certainly prefer the ability to use other chargers to power this device though, that magnetic charger on the Surface Pro. It's pretty handy. The EV also supports Windows Hello, though it's through a fingerprint reader integrated into the power button rather than through facial recognition. The buttons on this tablet are very shallow and hard to press though, particularly the volume buttons. Not so much of a concern with the power button, as you only need to tap it to unlock the device and activate the fingerprint lock, but the volume buttons, they're not particularly great. One of the best aspects to the EV though is the included keyboard cover and active pen, both of which are optional accessories for the Surface Pro. These accessories are basically essential to complete the overall package. Without them, you have just a basic tablet, but with them, you have a multi-mode device. So for Microsoft to charge an additional $230 for the combination seems a bit egregious. The keyboard cover, it's absolutely outstanding though. It's so much better than the Surface Pro type cover, even the premium signature type cover, that it's ridiculous Microsoft charges $130 to $160 for that accessory alone. Not only does the EV's keyboard cover provide a superior typing experience thanks to very clicky keys, it also includes additional features like support for wireless use via Bluetooth and 7-color LED backlighting. Plus the entire thing is covered with premium Alcantara fabric, just like the most expensive type cover Microsoft sells. The trackpad has a Gorilla Glass surface, which again feels excellent to use. No complaints about the trackpad whatsoever, and it provides an awesome tracking experience with a solid click and enough usable space. There's also an included active pen. It's not quite as good as the Surface Pen with fewer pressure levels and slightly longer latency, but it's still very usable for everyday annotation, drawing and highlighting work though. The EV's display, it's a 12.3-inch 2880 by 1920 sharp IGZO LCD panel, so the same size and 3:2 aspect ratio as the Surface Pro's display, with a slightly higher resolution and pixel density. Sharp's IGZO display technology, it's very good, so the display has some great inherent qualities. Viewing angles are excellent, as is its peak brightness, which hits 400 nits, well above a lot of other Windows systems. Eve claims a contrast ratio of 1500:1, I achieved 1260:1, but that's still a fantastic result. There is some backlight bleed, particularly along the bottom edge, which is noticeable when viewing dark images in dark environments. As a result, uniformity isn't perfect. That said, the top 2/3 are pretty good from a uniformity standpoint, and for creators that demand color accuracy, every EV unit is individually factory calibrated to the sRGB spectrum with a D65 or 6500K white point target and Delta E2000 values less than 1.0. The IGZO display is easily capable of hitting full sRGB coverage. I achieved 99.9% in my testing, so images appear vibrant and generally outstanding here. Unfortunately, my review unit actually shipped with an incorrect calibration due to an error in the calibration process. It did result in a bit of a red tint. Actual shipping units though, destined for you guys, backers, retail, crowdfunded, all that stuff, won't have the issue because after I pointed out to EV, they were nice enough to go back and retest every single unit. So let's talk about performance, which is probably the weakest area of the EV. While the Surface Pro uses a fully fledged 15-watt Intel Kaby Lake U-series processors, at least in their mid and upper tier models, the EV sticks with 4.5-watt Y-series Kaby Lake CPUs. These Y-series parts are clocked lower on the same 2 cores and 4 threads, and the Intel HD graphics, well, they aren't as fast. I'm going to put up some benchmarks here while I discuss how the EV performs in general, rather than looking at individual results. So when the Core i7 7Y75 in my EV review unit is tasked with relatively short workloads, talking about under 20 seconds for example, the performance difference between it and something like the Core i7 7500U, it's relatively small, in the range of 20% or less. This is seen in workloads like Excel Monte Carlo, WinRAR compression, and MATLAB. A CPU like the i7 7660U, which is found in the latest Surface Pro high-end variants, does clock higher, so these margins will extend somewhat, but it does give a rough idea of where the 7Y75 sits among other offerings. The key thing to take away from these benchmarks is that light or short workloads for most tasks performed on a mobile device like this, opening apps, loading web pages, editing documents and spreadsheets, light photo editing, and all those sort of things. Hit the CPU for a short period of time, and it's here that the Kaby Lake Y series CPU in the EV doesn't fall too far behind its U series counterparts. You know, the U series models are always faster in these tasks, but it's not by enough to cause a painful experience for those using Y series. It's in longer, more intensive workloads that the 7Y75 really suffers. Video rendering in Handbrake, for example, is 50% faster with the U-Series i7 7500U, and that margin does grow with the i7 7660U. Cinebench, another rendering workload, is a good 47% faster than the 7500U in the multi-threaded workload. These are prime examples where the higher TDP allows the U-Series to significantly outperform Y-Series. If you're thinking of, rendering a video, for example, it could take half an hour less on a U-Series machine for something 60 minutes long. GPU performance is another area where the Y-Series SKU suffers compared to its U-Series counterpart. In 3D Mark workloads like CloudGate, even just the HD 620 graphics pulls away by 30 to 40%. You throw an Iris Plus graphics and the 7Y75, it just can't keep up. The EV and most other low-power devices, they aren't well suited to gaming, but even in light graphics workloads or games, what you're going to see is better performance from U-Series CPUs no matter what. The EV can be connected to eGPUs through Thunderbolt 3, though this isn't ideal all the time for portable use. The EV, at least the model I received to review with 512GB of storage, uses an Intel SSD 600p, which is an entry-level PCIe NVMe SSD. The Surface Pro uses a Samsung PM971, and it's pretty similar in terms of its performance. Storage performance is good, often matching a number of top-end ultra portables or even outperforming them in tasks such as sequential reads. The 600p isn't as strong when it comes to write performance, though it still provides enough speed to allow fast app loading and basic I/O tasks. The EV's battery life as well, it's pretty good, which basically validates their choice to use a Y-series CPU in conjunction with the 48 watt-hour internal battery. In tests like PCMark Home, the EV outperforms the HP Spectre X360, which uses a larger 58 watt-hour battery, so 21% larger, and it has an 8% larger display as well. So that's a really great result, and it falls well within the range of devices we've tested with great battery life. So I think people will be really pleased with these results. All up, the EV is a lesson to all crowdfunded hardware startups on not just how to approach things correctly, but also how to take on an incumbent giant and produce a better product. Simply put, the EV is better than the Surface Pro in many ways, and that's quite remarkable. The EV has a great design and packs in loads more features than the Surface Pro, most importantly a lot more I/O. I also love that the keyboard and pen are included in the price, unlike with the Surface Pro, and the factory calibrated display is pretty impressive as well for those that require color accurate displays. The only main downside is the performance, with the U-Series CPUs in the Surface Pro outperforming the Y-Series parts in the EV. For lighter tasks like web browsing, spreadsheet work, and some light photo editing, the difference isn't that large, and the EV definitely isn't slow by any means, but if you're a video editor or need to run long simulations, you might want to stick to those upper end Surface Pro models. The key thing for me though is the price. The EV is $300 to $900 cheaper than equivalent Surface Pro models with the keyboard and pen price factored in. That's a pretty big difference and makes it hard to recommend the Surface Pro. There are some questions on things like EV availability, support, warranty, and so forth, because this is a new startup, first generation hardware, but with such a huge price difference, it's definitely worth looking into the EV if you're after something along the lines of a Surface Pro. Anyway, that's it for this look at the surprisingly good EV tablet. If you like what we do here at Hardware Unboxed, consider supporting us through our revamped Patreon page with all new reward tiers. I'll be back soon with a bunch of display reviews, so look out for those, and I'll catch you next time.